Well, it's a very intricate question. Regarding the state of nature, just a comment regarding it. The issue of how money emerges, how it develops, it was a very prevalent issue in economic thought. Now it has disappeared, but it was in the time of Marx and before it in Adam Smith. It was a very prevalent idea, and there is one basic narrative for it, which is Adam Smith describes it, starts with it. I guess it was there before him that people begin by bartering things. And then, I don't know, then it's very inconvenient to barter, so there's something that becomes a universal means of exchange, and then at the start it's metals, and then coins, and whatever, it's history. And if you read the first chapter of Capital, it appears as if it is the same narrative there. Because also Marx also starts with bartering, and then some kind of a commodity which is a universal exchange, and then money. And the question, what is the difference between them? And the difference is that Marx reviews this same narrative, but he constantly goes on and on about the paradoxical nature of how it is that we exchange one coat for 20 yards of linen. And what he points to is not the barter part of it, but the barter economy. The fact that if we want to think of barter as relevant to money, we have to think of barter economy, of the fact that one coat is exchanged not with linen, but with more or less precisely 20 yards of linen. So when he goes back, in a sense, he goes back in a speculative manner, but he already posits economy there. And it is a crucial point there, because from the fact that there is nothing in the code that can explain why it is exchanged for exactly 20 yards of linen, he goes on to develop, this foreignness or this indifference. He goes on to develop, the radical difference between use value and exchange value and value. And it relates to my presentation, because from this point,
exactly repeats this story of before the fall.
No, because
this whole theory of surplus is a theory of sin.
Yeah, but it
doesn't take into account that his idea of use value is basically an ontological abstraction of something that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, okay? Because in the end, it's really a question of how relations of power work. It doesn't matter whether the exchange value is between ducks or whether it is in a post-modern economy where you have derivatives. What you repeat is the same story of original sin.
No, but it's not before the fall for this one reason. Before the fall is Adam Smith's description. The butcher has enough meat and he wants bread, so he finds the baker who has bread and wants meat. This is before the fall. We have surplus. We just exchange sporadically. Yeah. But what Marx says is forget about this, sporadic exchanges. If we want to think of barter as relevant to us, we have to think of barter economy, which is not before the fall. He said in his, in the first chapter, he analyzes, in absurd length this simplest exchange, and what he refers to is the quantitative, the systematic manner of it. So in this sense, it is not before the fall. Yes. Okay. And about the Darwinian, I just say.
I would say, and I would like to bring our discussion. It's your voice.
Okay, the notion you talked about the emergence of money with global attention. So I was thinking, what is the precondition for money to emerge in a society? When does a society feel it needs some money? And I would say, maybe there's something to say about it, that without fear, there would be no idea of money that could come in. So money is basically the manifestation, the visible manifestation of fear in a society.
What I can do is, I don't know, I can do this relevant to your question is to
society Marxist answer. An answer from Marx, which is very interesting and very related to this talk. Marx says somewhere that commodity relations are inappropriate to primitive community, which is very close, which is based on kinship. You cannot imagine their commodity relations. So what he says is this: commodity relations first appear between foreign communities, in the borders between communities. One community exchanges with another community. And he adds something very interesting, and from that it spreads into the community itself. Which, if you think about it, it is a very, very interesting notion, because in a sense what Marx says is that with money or with commodity relation there spreads foreignness. With money, and you can see also here. You can also see here, the difference between Marx and economics or some social thought, because it is a very commonplace to say that money enables relation between strangers. And what Marx, the twist that Marx produces here is that money brings foreignness. When I interact with you with money, I treat you as a foreign, as a stranger. Money is inherently related to foreignness, and I think this it's relevant to Freud's second thought about money, about money and feces, because his second idea is a little bit different. What he says about the attempt to explain it is that feces are originally the gift of the infant to his parents. I mean, they because of his love for them, he parts away with this, with the thing which he at the beginning perceives as a part of his body, And it is a very different explanation, because here the shit itself is already a social thing, an intersubjective thing. Because if in explanation society there was nothing social in the feces themselves, in the shit itself. In the second explanation, there is also the feces are part of an intersubjective relation. So it's a very different explanation. So in a way, it completes the Marxist one, because what Freud says that the baby gives the shit as a gift of love, and we give money as strangers. So in a way, it's to make one strangers to one to another.
I think we have to close now, because it's 1:45.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm the master of the time. And the last episode we does not make any more break. And I would like to invite our first colleague here to me. And the idea is that we read the text of Marcel Drach, and I would beg you to make a comment, and then we could come to discussion. If you like, I would read the text if you.
Oh, I can read it, but I never read it, so I don't have any comment to do. But Daniel asked me to read it.
And you could organize a question.
Okay. So you want to read it?
Yes.
Okay.
Marcel Drach is not with us. It was not able to come for him because of the strike at the airport, Charles de Gaulle. He's a professor of economics at Paris Dauphine and was a former director at the International Collège de Philosophie Internationale. I think that is the right contribution. My colleague Alain Deneau will help me to finish this session by preparing spontaneously a comment to that paper, which is very interesting for me too, because Emmanuel Levinas usually is well known as a philosopher of the other, of alterity, of the transcendentality of the other, of the figure of the other, of the third, but he's not very well known as a philosopher of economics, and this has to do with his configuration of the third, because the third is represented, I think, by the medium of the money, in Levinas' philosophy. The two souls of money. I would like to suggest some tentative proposition about money referring to main theoretical fields, psychoanalysis and Marxism. These propositions are following. Money belongs to what Lacan calls the régime de biens, that is a regime of goods or commodities. As general equivalent of commodities, money is an institution of exchange and as such introduces temperance through quantity. Quantity has two sides. It is an impossible measuring device of the labor-producing goods, and it grounds what Marx calls the fetishism of the commodity. Temperance, quantity, impossible measure, and Marxian fetishism constitute the first soul of money. As general equivalent of goods, that is of tricksters, money has a Freudian fetish structure. It is a Denkmal, a memorial of a given up Lustgewinn. A fetish of erotische Lustgewinn, money is the support or the Träger of a speculative drive aiming at a limitless wealth entangled with a risk of ruin. Freudian fetish and speculative drive constitute the second soul of money. The regime is goods. Lacan, le régime de biens. A German emigre being asked after a couple of decades in the United States, "Are you happy?" answers, "Oh yes, I'm very happy. I'm really very, very happy, aber nicht glücklich." In the seminar, Les Savoirs du Psychoanalyste, we find Lacan's statement that the Verwerfung is what singles out the capitalist discourse. Session of January 1972. Lacan translates Verwerfung by the French neologism forclusion, débarment, exclusion. Of what? Setting forth the castration by putting aside les choses de l'amour, love matters. Keeping distance from love as defense against drive danger, therefore against anguish. In Civilization and its Discontent, das Unbehagen in der Kultur, Freud spells this restraint of the claim for happiness, for strong feelings of pleasure. This choice of the negative side of happiness takes a form in the capitalist discourse of libidinal investment on commodities instead of others. Eros is precluded in favor of commodities, of what Klossowski continuously names ustensilaire, I don't know the word in English. In La Monnaie Vivante, he says that commodities give rise to a utensilary perversion. Such a lowering of the subject's enjoyment, jouissance, makes commodities functioning as object A, thus becoming plus de jouir objects. Then everybody's jouissance limits everybody to one's body, keeping other bodies at distance. Proletariat is the name of people socially reduced to their own body in ancient Greece. The common cause of the capitalist proletarians, and of the capitalists as well, is commodity, as far as it gives substance to the object A. But Klossowski warns, ustensilaire is the name of the goods inasmuch they dismiss the fantasy, phantasme. They keep on a satisfaction bearing no relation to what is renounced. Therefore, commodities, goods are tricksters. They are essentially disappointing, permanent obsolescence. Lacan adds, the capitalist discourse is madly tricky, but devoted to puncturing. Lecture at the Milan University, May 1972. Second point, money as institution of commodity exchange. Marx qualifies the Sphäre des Warenaustauschs as follows, I quote,